Hi there, I'm Eggfur, and today we're going to be talking about villager pods. And I'm standing by an iron farm. It's a perfectly good iron farm, and it's got 20 villagers, two pods, one of which I'm standing on, one of which is over there behind me, and you can see the villagers inside the pod there. So this pod is not ideal, and we're going to talk about how to make a better 10 villager pod. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how to make a single villager pod which will hold 20 villagers, 30 villagers, or indeed 40 villagers. So the advantage of this is that it allows you to put all your villagers into one place. They'll be in a single one by one spot like that, but with 10, 20, 30, or indeed 40 villagers. So it's easier to get them in. It's easier to build. There's no chance of them cross-linking to the wrong pod and your iron farm breaking, and basically it's all around a good thing. So let's go and have a look at that.
Okay, so let's dive straight in.
On Bedrock.
So there's actually nothing massively wrong with this villager pod. You can see it's got 10 workstations, and the other one over here is exactly the same. And we saw an iron golem spawning just a minute ago, so it's obviously working. But there is a bit of a problem with this pod, and I want to show you what that is and how to make it just a little bit better. Okay, so I built a replica of the villager pod. I'm coming away from that iron farm over there, but this is the same as the one that we just saw. And the problem with it is essentially that the villagers are not able to work at this workstation or this workstation. They can't work at a workstation that's above their head height. So those two workstations do absolutely nothing. And that's not necessarily a big problem, because in an iron farm you need 75% of your villagers to have worked, and there are still 8 workstations there which they can reach and work at. So in theory your iron farm will still work, but actually it would be better if we build it like this instead, because villagers can always work on the workstation that they're standing on. Let me grab a workstation, pop that there. So they can always work at this workstation, they can always work at all of these workstations, and they can sometimes work at a workstation which is in any one of these corners. So it doesn't matter, all the way around, whichever one of those you choose is fine. And when I say they can sometimes work there, it depends where they are inside this space. So if your villager who's linked to this workstation is pushed over to this corner, they won't be able to work there. If they're kind of in the middle or over in this corner, then of course they will be able to work there. So this is just a bit of a better design. It does mean it's going to be a little bit more reliable, because more of your villagers can work reliably at these workstations. And if you want to convert from that to, from what we had before, and you've already got villagers in here, let's pop some villagers in. Then you can do that fairly easily. What we would need to do is we need to put a workstation down here with a piston underneath it, facing upwards, like that. And we can break this block. The villagers will pop down, but they're still trapped inside that space. And then if I grab now my lever, there's my lever, and I can just pop that workstation back up its place there. So now my villagers have 9 workstations they can use. I add one more, and they may be able to use that 10th one as well. So that's a pretty straightforward way of converting your existing villager pod into a really good 10 villager pod. Right, so we're going to look at how we turn this now into a 20, 30 and 40 villager pod. Bear in mind, of course, that if you are using 30 or 40 villagers, you're pretty much doing that to massively optimize your farm. 20 villagers is an advantage over 10. When you get to 30, you get about 5% more iron than if you had 20 villagers. When you go to 40, you get a really small amount more, but it does allow you to get pretty much the maximum amount of iron out of a single farm. Generally, it's better to build 2 farms if you can, if you want more iron. But yeah, if you do want to really optimize it, then this is how you would go about doing it. So how we're going to turn this 10 villager pod into a pod for 20 villagers? Well, I've got 10 workstations at the moment. Let's add some more. That's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And actually 17 workstations would be enough for a 20 villager farm because you need 75% of them to work. That's only 15 out of 20. So if they could all work at these 17 workstations, then that would give you a perfectly good farm. However, as we talked about before, they can't all work at the workstations in the corners. Depends where they are in the middle. So actually, if you just had it like this with 20 villagers in the middle, it would be quite unreliable. So we are going to make it better. We're going to add, for a start, 3 more workstations to make it up to 20. Then I'm going to fill in some of these gaps here. And on this other side, I'm going to put a set of 6 blocks here as well. So I'm now making it 5 wide by 3. So that's our basic setup for 20 villagers. So you might well be asking yourself, how does this help at all? Because this workstation in front of me here and these 2 behind me, the villagers can't reach, right? So they can't work at those. They'll be able to link to them, they won't be able to work. So this doesn't really help at all. And there's a couple of things which are important to bear in mind here. So the first thing is that I want to have at least as many workstations as required to get 75% of my villagers to work. So in a 20 villager farm, that's at least 15. I could have up to 5 nitwits in this farm. And if I've got 5 nitwits and 15 workstations, then that would work perfectly fine. If I've got more villagers who can work, then I should have enough workstations for all of them as well. And, you know, ideally you have no nitwits at all, give everybody a chance to work, and then you want 20 workstations as we've got here. But we need to do something with these workstations to allow the villagers to actually work at them. And that is where the redstone comes in. So to place a redstone, we are going to extend out here by 2 blocks, come across 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, and underneath that down 2 blocks and across 4 again. I don't need that block and I don't need that block. And then here we're going to place a piston, another one here, and then directly underneath those, another piston there, and a piston just here as well. Okay, put redstone dust, 3 redstone dust along here with a repeater on 1 tick, and here you want 4 redstone dust. And then we just put a block behind that repeater with another blob of redstone dust on top of that. On the other side, so these pistons are going to push this line of blocks across and this line of blocks across. On the other side, we want to do the same, but we want our pistons to be 1 block further away. So we're going to do it like this. Oops. So line 4 blocks, get rid of these temporary ones. And we're going to place our pistons here, 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 and here. Okay, so once they're pushed across this way, this will be touching against these pistons and they'll be able to push back. And we're just going to do a bit of tidying up. We're going to fill these blocks in, and we're going to fill in these blocks as well here, because none of that middle row is going to move at all. Then we want to do the same thing as we did before. Oh, I've put the 4th block on the wrong side. Should be there. So we'll have a repeater on 1 tick down here, redstone dust along here and along the top, a block behind that repeater, just there, with some dust on it as well. So you can see it's exactly the same as the other side now. And what's important is this repeater. And what that repeater does is when we power this line of redstone dust here, the top pistons will fire 1 tick before the lower pistons. And that's important because if both of these blocks are moving at the same time, with villagers in here, there's a chance they might be able to phase out. And if they phase out, they'll drop out of your farm and it'll be a complete nightmare. We don't want that. So by moving the top row 1 tick before the bottom row, there's always a solid block next to the villagers and they can't move. So that's the point of these 2 repeaters here. So the only thing we want to add now is we want to add a way of actually clocking this so that it'll move by itself. And we're going to do that by pointing into this redstone dust, placing a temporary block and then another block, and the same on the other side. We can break the temporary blocks. And then I want a piston pointing this way, piston pointing this way, and a block of redstone on either piston, doesn't really matter. Now you might be recognizing this now as an etho hopper clock, which it is. So I'm going to have two hoppers and they need to point into each other like this. I want a comparator on each piston facing outwards and redstone dust on those blocks after the comparators. So that is my etho hopper clock. All I need to do is I need to add 20 items into here, and we might adjust that number in a moment. We'll see. So add 20 items and this clock will start to move backwards and forwards. So as the items go through the system, there we go, it's moved. And whenever it moves, it'll power or unpower these torches. And what happens is as the block moves across this way, this set of pistons will fire. As the redstone block moves across this way, this set of pistons will fire. And so it'll keep swapping over. And because all of these are now moving, the villagers in the middle will unlink from the workstations on either side and will relink to a new workstation. And if you're thinking, well, actually, why do you need all of these workstations? And if they're going to just unlink and relink to another random workstation, why can't I just have the workstations in the middle that I know they can connect to? Well, the reason is that the villagers always connect to a workstation in the same order. So the villagers are held in the game files in a particular order. So let's imagine this is our game file with a list of villagers in there. And I've got two workstations for my four villagers, which are going to keep moving around. And you might think, well, actually, okay, so these top two are linked to these two workstations. I'm going to shuffle them and I'll end up maybe with this guy and this guy connected to them. Well, I won't. All that'll happen is the order of these two workstations might swap, but it's always going to be these first two villagers who connect first. So you need to have enough workstations for all of your villagers to be able to connect, or at least 75% of them. So if it was, if you could have 4 villagers, that would be enough. But we want to have a workstation for every villager. So that's kind of the theory of why we can't just get away with having fewer workstations. But this now will be perfectly fine. I'm going to just temporarily stop the clock and just wait for it to flick back over. There we go. And we're going to pop some villagers into here now. So grab my spawn egg and I can put some villagers in and hopefully we'll get lucky and not get any babies. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, I think. So there are my villagers. And if I now start my clock again, actually I need to place a bed because otherwise they aren't in the village. So let me just pop a bed down. I'm going to pop it here. So it's at the right level for them to be able to connect. So one of them has connected to that bed. You can see now they're all connecting to their workstations. And what happens when the piston moves across? You get the angry clouds. They're all disconnecting from their workstations and they reconnect again. And you get the green sparklies. And what we want is those green sparklies to have disappeared before the workstations move again. Because actually they're not properly linked until the green sparklies have gone. And they can only work after they're properly linked. So this looks about right. You might need to adjust it if you've got a fairly laggy world. You might find you need to add couple more items. Don't add too many though, because we want this to move as often as possible to give us the most chances for all of the villagers to connect. So there you go. This is a fully reliable now villager pod for 20 villagers. Bear in mind, like with all iron farms, you might need to wait a full Minecraft day for it to start working. And that's because the villagers work twice a day, once in the morning and once in the late afternoon. And to give them the maximum chance to have worked in that day, you might need to wait for both those periods to come. But this is 100% reliable. I've tested this a lot, and they always manage to work during a day. So, you know, your farm will keep working. So that's it. That's 20 villagers. So the nice thing is that actually to go to 30 villagers is really simple. And let me show you how to do that. So let's stop this clock again. And we'll just wait for it to flick back across. There we go. So if you remember, I've left some gaps. So at the moment I've got 20 workstations. And I'm going to break this one. That's 21. I'm going to break these 22, 23, 24 and 25. And 25 is more than enough 30 villagers. I actually need 23 to get 75%. So 25 is more than enough. This will be fully reliable now for 30 villagers. And I could add 10 more villagers into here and they will always be able to work every day. Okay. So what about 40? So actually, again, 40 is really simple to do. And what we're going to do to get 40 villagers is we're just going to add another piston down here. So piston there, piston here, a piston under these two as well, like that. And we're going to add some more workstations even. So more workstations along under here. So you'll notice that actually none of these workstations the villagers can get to, right? But that doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're giving them enough workstations that the villagers who are connected to one they can work to actually have a different workstation to connect to instead. So you remember they all connect in order, and so the first villager might have connected to a workstation he can work to. We want him to be able to move to a different workstation, so we need enough workstations for that. This now has given us, so if we count along here, that's 5 times 3, so that's 15 at this side. It's 15 along this side as well, that's 30, plus 5 in the middle, 35. So that's enough. 5 villagers won't be able to work, I don't care. They could be nitwits if we wanted. Take that off, and there we go. So that's a pod which will happily serve 40 villagers. And again, I've tested this, it's really reliable. Last thing I want to show you is you can also, if the noise is a bit annoying, we can reduce it a little bit. So if I grab a daylight sensor and I just pop it on there and I set it to night mode, then on night mode, it means that during the night, this clock will stop. So actually that's absolutely fine because the villagers can't work during the night anyway. They will only work during the day. So as long as the clock is working during the day, then this is cool. They'll all be able to do what they need to do. So there you go. And in actual fact, you know, if you think about if you've got an iron farm with just a 10 villager pod on it, then it's quite easy with your villagers still in there to convert it to 20, 30, 40 villagers. Like I say, going above 20 doesn't give you a lot of benefit, but it does give you some benefit if you want to do that. Right, last thing we want to do is we obviously want to spawn proof this. So we're going to spawn proof it along up to the pistons, all the way along here. Nothing should be able to spawn on the redstone dust anyway, except for cats maybe. But hopefully your villager, your iron farm platform is big enough that this will not be anywhere near spawning spaces for the iron golems or the cats. Right, so next thing I want to do is I just want to go and have a look at how we place this within an actual iron farm, which has 40 villagers, and just make sure we're putting it in the right place to do that. Right, so we're at my 3-tier iron farm. This has got 40 beds, so we can have 40 villagers. Bear in mind, of course, that with a 3-tier iron farm, you don't get more iron golems. It's just a way of keeping it a bit more compact horizontally at the expense of making it taller. So this is one of these beds, either on this underneath this platform or underneath this platform, will be the village center. And if it's one of these, then the top and middle platform will spawn golems. And if it's one of these, then the bottom and middle platform will spawn golems. You do not get golems on all 3 platforms. So what I've done up here is I've been breeding villagers, and so I've got a whole bunch of 40 villagers here, and we're going to pop them into our cell. And then I'm just going to flip that trapdoor and they will start falling down into there. And we'll give them a little helping hand with some water in a minute. Off you go. Thank you very much. Right, get rid of all of this. Don't need any of this anymore. Just going to put a lid on these guys. Break the rest of this here. Okay, and my iron farm is back in its working state. I've got 40 villagers in here. I can switch this to night mode to get them moving. And I've got the time set to day at the moment, so they are able to work. So hopefully after a couple of passes of backwards and forwards of this pod, we should start to see some iron golems spawning. So I've actually just been into Universal Minecraft Editor to have a quick look, and I've realised I've got 42 villagers in here, which is not going to work at all. So I'm going to kill 1, 2 villagers, and now we should start seeing some iron golems spawning. So yeah, I was wondering why it wasn't working. Now hopefully it will. And there we go. There's our first iron golem. He's going to fall down and get killed by my trident killer here. Once I reset it. This is not a very good trident killer, obviously. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to actually turn that off and turn this one off as well, because I want to make sure that I get 4 golems. So with 40 villagers, I should be able to get 4 golems alive in the village at any one time. So we'll just leave that for a minute or two, just to make sure that I do get all 4 golems. So whilst we're just waiting for that, I want to talk about whereabouts the villagers or the village pod needs to be relative to the beds. So villagers can connect to a bed which is within 16 blocks horizontally of them. So that's bed pillow. So from where the villagers are across to this furthest bed pillow has to be within 16 blocks. And it is. And same out horizontally, of course. So that's not a problem here. But they can also connect to a bed which is no more than 2 blocks above their head. So at this height. And we can see that we're fine because our bed is only 1 block above their head. And up to 4 blocks below their feet. So this is the first block below their feet, 2, 3, 4th block below their feet. So our beds must be higher than that, or level with that, which they are. So that's how you position the pod. And we saw our first golem arriving down there. Okay, so I think that's our 4th golem who's just arrived. I think I've got 3 down here. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. And I've got 1 over here. So now there'll be no more golems until I kill these guys, which I'm going to do. Okay, and this farm, because it's got an efficient platform size, it kills the golems quite quickly, and it's got 40 villagers, should actually produce over 400 ingots per hour. So that's it for today. I hope you found that interesting and you've learned something useful for your worlds as well. And remember to check out the rest of my channel. I'd love to get a subscribe from you or a like, and I'm happy to receive any comments, and I tend to reply to a lot of comments as well. So feel free to ask any questions down below. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.